well, how about Biden? He's going to raise the minimum wage, and he thinks that, what we can do is, basically, hey, who cares if we have a bunch of debt now? We'll pay it off with a stronger economy later. What do you say to those two things?
Well, first of all, we're not going to have a stronger economy because of more government spending. We're going to have a weaker economy. What they want to do is not pay off the debt, but repudiate it with inflation, which is what's going to happen, which is like a default, only kind of a stealth default. But all the minimum wage does is make it that much harder for people to lawfully be employed. I mean, if you think about what the minimum wage is, it's the rate that a worker must convince an employer to pay him in order to legally have a job, right? Because everybody, sells their labor, right? If you think about each worker is a businessman and he has one product, his own labor, right? And so you go out in the market and you try to find somebody who wants to buy your labor, right? That wants to give you a paycheck and employ you. Well, what do you have to offer? It's, well, what are your skills, right? When you're a worker and you're going to all these various employers, here's what I can do for you. These are my skills. Here's how much value I can add to your organization. Right. Now, if you have a lot of skills and you can add a lot of value, maybe I can add $20 of value an hour, $30 an hour. Okay, the minimum wage is going to affect me, right? I can get a job. But let's say you're a young kid or even in your mid-20s, but for whatever reason, you just don't have a lot of skills. There's not that much you can do, but you can do something. So let's say you can add $12 worth of value to employers. Okay, well, you have to convince the employer to pay you $15. You ain't getting a job because you only got $12 an hour worth of skills. Now, if there's no minimum wage or the minimum wage is $7.25, you can get a job. But the higher they make the minimum wage, the more people that get priced out of the labor market. That's why the best minimum wage is $0. That way, nobody gets priced out of everybody can get a job. But the beauty of getting a job, and people say, well, how could you live? There's no minimum wage. What if people got a job at $5 an hour?
Right.
Well, that's better than having no job, right? And if you couldn't convince somebody to pay you $6 an hour, it's because $5 is the most you can get. Because after all, it's a competitive market. If I can deliver $10 an hour worth of value, no one's going to get away with paying me $5 because somebody else will outbid them and go say, or I'll work for myself. I mean, nobody forces anybody to take a job. So if you can make more money being self-employed, then you won't work for somebody. You work for yourself. The reason you take a job is because you can make more money working for somebody else than you can make working on your own. But the best way, if you only have $5 an hour worth of skills, right? The best way to make $15, $20 an hour in the future is to take that $5 an hour job and then develop skills on the job. That's where you get the best training at a job. That's where you learn. That's where you become more valuable. If you make it illegal for the guy who has $5 an hour worth of skills to get a job because you set the minimum wage at 15, that guy or gal is never getting a job. Which may be the real reason that the government likes the minimum wage is because these people are permanently unemployable. And so the only way they can get money other than crime is by the government giving them welfare. And the government likes that because once they make you dependent on welfare, then you're so afraid of losing that check that you vote for the politicians that are providing the welfare. So it basically is a way for Democrats to guarantee a bunch of voters because they've taken away all their hope of getting a job. And now the only way they can survive is with a government check.
I mean, that's fascinating. I mean, when you look at California, you've got literally 39 million plus people. 1/3 are on Medi-Cal to receive support just to pay for healthcare. And they rely on the government for that purpose, the California government for that purpose. But now the question is, what do you say to somebody who's a single mom in her 30s, divorced, 2 kids, working 2 jobs, making the California minimum wage, whatever it is now, 10, 11 bucks an hour, paycheck to paycheck, can't get ahead, doesn't have an extra minute to even watch a TV show, let alone improve her skills. She's not improving her skills to get a better job other than maybe, let's say, working at a restaurant or whatever. What do you say to somebody in a situation like that? Don't they need some support from the government to maybe be able to pump up their bank account a little bit so they can take a shift off and try to study? What's your take?
No, I think the reason that they're struggling is because we've had too much government in the past. What we have to do is free these people from the burden of government. So we need to get rid of their taxes, get rid of the payroll tax, Social Security tax, Medicare tax, get rid of all these rules and regulations that are costing her employer a lot of money that otherwise could have been paid to her in terms of higher wages, but instead it's spent on government regulation. So employers could pay their workers more money if they didn't have to send so much money to the government. But also, you mentioned healthcare. The reason healthcare is so expensive is because of the government. If we got the government out of healthcare, the cost would collapse. The same thing with education. The reason that college is so expensive is because of all these government subsidies. Before the government got involved in healthcare and education, they were inexpensive. And the free market is great at making education and healthcare cheaper. Just like it's great at making cell phones cheaper and computers, it brings down the cost of healthcare and improves the quality of healthcare at the same time. The reason it's not happening is because we have all this government involvement. So get the government out of education, get the government out of healthcare, let the free market bring down the cost and bring up the quality, and just have a vibrant free market economy. That is the best thing. What lifts people out of poverty is free market capitalism. All these government promises of more programs and more help, they have never worked. What they do is they impoverish the people that they're trying to lift out of poverty. They make them worse off. That's what happens. I mean, socialism destroys every economy that it infects. It's a disease.
The Peter Schiff Show.